Good evening, everyone. My name is João Furtado. I'm a DevOps engineer at tb.lx, and today I'm going to talk to you about a bit of our journey this past year. So, we are a startup within the corporate environment. We were created by Daimler to support their trucks and buses units. We are 1 year old. We have around 30 people, most of them engineers, and they are from all over the world, speaking multiple languages. So, what's our challenge as a company? Well, you see, each trucks and bus units has their own telemetric from their buses and trucks. They have their own analytics and insight processes, their own IT setup, processes, methods, and they provide very good services to their own local market. But what if they want to bring it to the global sphere? Well, that's where we come in. So now focusing more on our challenges as DevOps, let's talk about the first challenge, the freedom versus maintainability. This is the big one for startups. Initially, you don't have you have ideas, but not products. You have a lot of tools. And you start hiring people. Every developer has their own comfort level. They have their own technologies, their own languages they like to play around. And training everyone to know everything, it's costly, both in time and money. So your projects usually follow the same line. You have a project with a lot of technology. The progress happens very quickly because everyone knows what to do in their technology. The code gets deployed however it gets there, scripts, pipelines, dragging. The project gets delivered. Then you get an email from the customer. Well, how are you going to support this? That's the tricky part. So for us, we decided, like everything in DevOps, the answer is it depends. We decided to compromise in the cortex, so those are fixed. We decided we want to have core knowledge in streaming technology, in containerization and CI/CD pipelines. So those are non-negotiables. But we've become flexible in terms of coding languages, provided they support testing, compilation and deployment, and they are easy to maintain the dependencies. But our tech radar as a startup is not yet fully defined. Now, the plumbing problem. This one was tricky. When you're starting out, you have tech, but you don't know how to deploy it. You have code, but it's still a tricky issue. So what tool do you choose to deploy code that you're just building now? Well, for us, we tried a whole different set of technologies. None of those solved our problem particularly. Some would just fix it temporarily or make our pipelines very brittle. We had decided, well, let's host our own solution, but that brought yet another set of problems. Remember, we are a small startup, so we had to think about maintainability, availability, scalability. So we started thinking, where's the value in CI/CD? Is it the tool itself or the pipeline? For me personally, it's the pipeline, since that's where I want to add more value, that's where I want to extend. The pipeline should be something easy to maintain, easy to read, easy to write, and extend. So we went with a tool that maybe it's not completely free in terms of what allows us to do, but it integrates very well with our cloud provider and gives us the flexibility to deploy a whole set of technology. But that's not the only lesson we got from there. When we finally committed to a tech, we had a goal in mind. Everyone started to learn from it, started to explore the tools, started to mess around with their own pipelines. And we, DevOps, well, we became second players in the development pipelines. We no longer were the main ones deploying the code for the pipelines, but the developers start messing around, changing things, adding things, and sooner rather than later, we became mostly code reviewers and approvers. I don't write pipelines for a while now, and everyone is trying, is experimenting, and we saw that new projects, because every month there's a whole new set of problems, they don't have any bottlenecks anymore. So they can add their own CI/CD, we have their own environment they can target to, and they deploy the code as they see fit. So another interesting problem is regarding the infrastructure. Well, it's hard to tell developers what infrastructure is and how to deploy infrastructure. Well, it's usually a very scary task when you say you have to provision a VM or you have to set up a container or two. And we decided, well, let's bring the problem to their level. They understand code, so we went with code. Fully infrastructure as code. And initially, like the pipelines, we wrote everything. But with time, developers started seeing, well, I need this variable. Well, why don't you add it yourself? Why don't you make a pull request? And sooner rather than later, they are deploying their code, of course in a more sandbox environment, but still they are working on that. So with that, again, we became code reviewers. We don't make infrastructure anymore. Only if there's a very pointy use case, they are in charge of the infrastructure. Because in the end, who knows how to deploy the code if not the person that developed it? Of course, we're still working on the monitoring and observability part of it. It's an ongoing project for us, DevOps, but we're getting there. So we reached a point where we had some freedom with centralization, and we committed to a certain core of technologies. We know what we want to build. We still gave autonomy to our development teams. They can create their own pipelines, deploy the infrastructure, and with that freedom, us, the DevOps, we became more of the gatekeeper and code reviewer. So everything that gets added to the environment passes through us. We give the go-ahead, it gets deployed. And with that came focus. Instead of focusing on the daily grind of fixing pipelines or fixing deployment, we became a bit more detached of that work. And now we are mainly focusing on the day two of the projects, how to deploy this at scale. And we are no longer worried about the small potatoes. That's the developer's job now. But we also found that we had more opportunities for guidance and mentoring. People were coming to us not with problems and requirements, but more with, hey, how can you help me with this? How can I do this? How can I learn more about this? That's cool. And overall, the biggest win of them all is everyone is more engaged with the overall project. There's not us versus them. There's only we. And that's basically it. That's been our journey at tb.lx so far. So thank you.